Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Baron. This is your Brain on Books. Now we're a couple weeks into the new year, and I've had a good opportunity to kind of reflect on the reads from 2021. And I do have some favorites, which I'll probably make a separate video for. But today I just kind of wanted to go over some books that absolutely surprised me that I had low expectations for, or kind of just didn't even know what they were about, and they left a pretty strong impression on me. And then also I wanted to touch on some of the books that are well loved that I really expected to be a hit, and unfortunately they were a miss for me. So let's just get into it. And I'm going to start with the books that surprised me here. And the first one is actually Peter Pan. Now, I had never read this. I've seen every adaptation there is, but I read this with my daughter, and the book was not what I expected at all. This is extremely atmospheric. It's dark in tone. It tells the narrative mostly through dialogue in an almost perfect way. And I thought this was going to be kind of like a kid's story in the fashion of, E.B. White or Ronald Dahl or something. And this was just so much more. I cannot believe I waited so long to read this. I highly recommend you pick it up. I mean, if you think this is just a kid's book and, whatever, try it. I would be shocked if you didn't like it. It's just a classic story, and the execution is perfect. I don't know any other way to say it. So that was a big surprise for me. And I definitely will be reading it again, no doubt. It's a short book. It might be one of those just kind of frequent time to time. Throw it in the mix when I'm looking for something kind of fun. And going on from there, I have Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Now, I read this early in the year, and I've been singing its praise for a while. And this quickly became my favorite science fiction book of all time. Now, I have a full review for this, so if you really want to know the details behind the book, go check it out. But the bottom line is this is several short stories with an overarching narrative to it. Now, one in particular, for those who have read it, The Scholar's Tale, hit me with an emotional gut punch that I have just never experienced from a book before. So much so that I almost didn't know if I was going to be able to finish it. I almost DNF'd the book not because it wasn't good or I wasn't enjoying it. I just didn't know if I could make it through. And I continued, I finished that story, and it completely broke me. Absolutely. Like, I've read books to where, the end, I kind of tear up a little bit, or you have that kind of emotional resonance to it, but nothing has made me completely break down like that story in Hyperion, and that's why it's my favorite sci-fi novel. And I've read some great ones. I've read the classics, but even the classics, Ender's Game and Dune, etc., they're good books, but none of them were able to do that to me. And I cannot recommend that book enough. It's a masterpiece. So moving on from there, I have Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Now this I did a read with my aunt, my mom, and my sister. They wanted to do kind of a buddy read situation. They told me to pick a book, and I didn't really know what this was about, but it was kind of one of those things, I saw it everywhere. I knew it was part of book clubs, and it seemed like a safe pick. Well, I was completely engrossed in this, and this is not the kind of thing I would normally pick up, but I read it in 2 days, completely sucked up. It just felt so real. I've never kind of experienced a book to where the environment you're in feels like a character. And, we talk about world building a lot, especially with fantasy, but this was a very isolated setting, but that setting was dealt with full character development, and it was just so real. I felt like I was there. And when I finished this book and I closed the last page, I was just bummed. I wanted to just keep going. I wanted to be with this story, and it just complete surprise. I just picked it up on a whim because it seemed kind of like, a lot of people like this, so I'll give it a try. I get why they like it. It's a great book. So going on from there, I have Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. Now, I was going through kind of a contemporary fiction kick early last year, and I was looking through a lot of just lists of books people recommend. I watched a lot of BookTube videos, and this one kept popping up, and I didn't know anything about it. I just knew the cover looked cool, the title was cool, people recommended it, and it had a bunch of awards on it. I gave it a go. Well, I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know the subject matter. I didn't know it was a YA book. but even though it's something that if you gave me the synopsis for, I probably wouldn't have bought it. I'm so happy I read that book. That book is so charming, such a heartwarming story, and it portrays family just better than I've seen done. Just like the emotional support element of an actual family, whether it be good or bad or whatever, is just perfectly executed that. And even though it's a YA book, I felt the writing style was kind of perfect. Like it didn't feel watered down, and I felt like every line had its perfect place. It was the perfect length. It's just a great book. And I know there's actually a sequel that just came out. I haven't picked it up yet, but it's certainly on my radar, and I hope to read it this year. So the last one I have, as far as big surprises, is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This book has a pretty big reputation. A lot of people have read it and loved it. I didn't know what to expect out of this book. I figured it would just be okay. It's a short read. But this puzzle box novel is just so enchanting and atmospheric, and there isn't a single word out of place. I wouldn't change a single thing about this book. It is flawless, and I highly recommend you pick this up. If you haven't already, I know it's kind of a booktube darling. Most people have read this by now, but I didn't expect this to blow me away as much as it actually did. So now that we kind of wrapped up the good books, let's get into the ones that I thought were a disappointment. Now, I know a lot of these books are well loved by people, and everybody's got different tastes. It's subjective, right? So don't destroy me in the comments. And if you do, at least be funny about it, please. But the first one I have is Beartown by Richard Bachman. Now, this book I thought was just really, really bizarre. It's about a small hockey town, rural community where basically the culture of the town and the economy is based around a youth hockey team. And there is essentially a rape between one of the players and the coach's daughter that kind of throws the whole town into chaos. So I had a couple issues with this. I know this is a translated book, but the writing style felt so weird to me. It's like really heavy adult topics, but it was written like almost like kind of a really simple, almost middle grade YA writing style, which it just felt so disjointed. And then also, since you're dealing with these heavy themes, I expected more of a kind of a deep dive into how it affects the individual characters. And I felt like it kind of glanced over things that were important. There was also several instances to where, I don't know, it felt like Bachman was trying to tell me that something was intense rather than just showing me and letting me make that assumption on my own. And I don't really appreciate that kind of writing style. So overall, this was a big disappointment. And this is the first Bachman book I read, and I know a lot of people love it, but I don't think I'm going to be continuing with his books after this one. So going on from there, I have Golden Sun, book 2 of the Red Rising trilogy. Now, the first Red Rising book was just okay. But overall, I kind of enjoyed it. Like, I like the Battle Royale style of story, and it was a different setting. It was a little all over the place, but by and large, I enjoyed it. Especially because, like, I know everybody said, okay, well, the first one's not so good, but once you get to book 2, it's just amazing. You're going to be hooked. Well, I wasn't. I thought this book was a mess. I don't like first-person present stories. There were so many moments in here where I felt like they were trying to be impactful to where Pierce Brown was just kind of like, isn't this crazy? Don't you see this? Look at this twist I put in the book. But they were so obvious. And I just never felt like the stakes were high because the whole book, there was no dynamic range. It was just like go, 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 go the whole time. You know the characters, nothing really bad is going to happen to him, especially the main character being first person. So I just was like, okay, let's get through this scene. Let's see what happens next. And I didn't care. I just didn't care. And I also don't like books to where you have like this wish fulfillment, like teenager element to where they go from being like complete adolescence to being amazing and perfect, and they can conquer the world, and nobody's as good as them just out of nowhere. And that's what this book is. And it was a drag. And I feel the same way about book 3. I did continue after this. I was kind of just determined to finish the trilogy. Big letdown. Big letdown. But it really boils down to the writing style. And some people love it because they like that fast-paced stuff. I like more of a slow, meticulous story. That wasn't it. So another one, classic, is Lord of the Flies. Now, I went through kind of a phase midway through the year where I was going through all the required reading lists for, high school, universities, and just kind of seeing, hey, is there any that I never read? And this was one, and I know most people read this when they were very early on in life, but for whatever reason, I just didn't pick it up. But this book was boring. Oh my gosh, was it boring. I feel like this could have been like an 80-page short story novella kind of thing, but it just dragged on. And the themes, I get what it's trying to show, but I just didn't care. And some of it's so obvious. I mean, I guess it would probably resonate more with young people that kind of just don't have this broad view of kind of the human experience. But for me, it was just lame. It was lame. It was outdated writing style. I struggled to get through it, but I was determined. I was like, this is a classic. I have to finish it. And also, for a lot of people, say this book is scary. What? Are you kidding me? No, not good. So, moving on from there, I have The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. This book is terrible. I know people love Joe Abercrombie, and I loved the first trilogy, the regular First Law, and I read Best Served Cold, and it was all right, okay? But I continued on. Nothing happens in this book. Nothing. This is basically the calm before the storm with a single battle, and you're just ping-ponging between characters and just seeing kind of what's going on with them. And Abercrombie revisits a lot of scenes or concepts and ideas that happened in the First Law trilogy, but every example of it was not as good. I mean, this kind of just sitting around waiting for battle. Like, if I compare that to The Siege and Best Served Cold, infinitely better. It revisits the circle in this. The one in Last Argument of Kings, 10 times better. I mean, there's only one character in here I actually enjoyed, and that was really just how the voice sounded in the audiobook. But even this was such a missed opportunity because, I mean, he could have made some commentary on war or anything else. And at the end of it, I literally sat down. I go, okay, well, maybe there's something, a statement he's trying to make with this. And, there's some kind of allegorical stuff or some subtext I'm missing. And I really thought about it. And I just don't think there is. I don't. And at this point, I'm realizing a lot of Joe Abercrombie, it's shtick. And if you like that shtick, you're going to like this. But for me, it's not enough to carry a book this size. It's just not, And I'm very hesitant reading Red Country, but people who I know that kind of know my taste say, go for it. You might like that one better. So I'm going to continue. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but I genuinely thought this book was terrible. So, big miss on that one. Okay, and I saved the best for last. We have The Eye of the World, Book 1 of the Wheel of Time. Now, I jumped on the bandwagon like everyone else with the show coming out. I said, you know what, I'm going to try to read the first few books before the premiere of season 1, and I'll know what's going on, and I'll be able to have discussions with everyone else. It took me months to read through this book. The writing style in this, I do not understand, generally do not understand how people could like this. I don't get it at all. Well, let me take that back. Maybe when I was 12, 13 years old, I would have thought this was kind of cool. But the descriptions in this book are so boring. And the thing that's wacky is all the descriptive parts come before the context of what's being described. So you just start describing things and you don't even know what's going on or who you're talking about with this new POV shift. and then it'll tell you where you are or what character. So then you have to go backwards and piece it together. I don't understand how that's acceptable and people love this book as much as they do. If you like Wheel of Time, cool. You know, I guess it's accessible. I guess it's expansive. It's very derivative, full of tropes. Good for you if you like it, but I thought this book was crap. Sorry. So I foolishly bought all the Wheel of Time hardcovers, and they are currently for sale. So anyway, that's the list. I hope you enjoyed this. If you read these books, let me know what you think. Especially the ones that were disappointment. I'm sure people have some opinions on that. So until next time, see ya.